Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how I personally crochet a cat-eared beanie. I will be walking you through every single step of this project, from creating a slip knot to chaining, to color changing, to weaving in your tails and seaming up your project. So if any of that interests you, please stick around. And if you find this tutorial helpful, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up, as it helps boost this tutorial for other beginner crocheters in the community. Also, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I put out a new video every Monday and Friday, and it ranges from anywhere from tutorials to project vlogs to trying out new yarns. And I also knit as well, so I alternate between crochet and knitting content here on the channel. So with that, let's go ahead and hop right into the tutorial. So starting with the materials needed for this specific project, you're going to need a worsted weight yarn. I have two because I plan on doing a striped hat, but you could just use one as long as it's a weight 4 yarn. Also a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle to weave in our tails at the end, a tape measure to make sure our project will fit our head, and finally, a crochet hook. I'm using my 5mm Clover Amour crochet hook, but any will do. Starting our project with a slip knot, holding the yarn closest to your palm with your thumb, and wrapping the yarn around 2 fingers to make an X facing you and 2 lines on the back of your hand. We're going to go under the first loop and grab the second, pulling it and taking our fingers out of the yarn. And then if you pull on the working tail of your yarn, you'll make a slip knot. We're going to insert our crochet hook and chain 79. For me, my head measures 22.5 inches. If you have a smaller or larger head, I suggest keeping your measuring tape close by. To find out how your hat is going to fit after you wash it, if you give it your chain a slight stretch, you'll see how the yarn will fit once it's relaxed. Not pulling super hard, but just slightly stretching it to get your correct measurements. To start row 1, we're going to do a half double crochet in the 3rd chain from our hook. So by yarning over and inserting our hook into the 3rd chain, and yarning over and pulling through. With 3 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through those 3 loops. So here I am doing it slowly so you can see. And that is creating a half double crochet. So I've already done 2, now I need to do 75 more half double crochets for a total of 77 half double crochets. We chained the 79, but by doing half double crochets, we're doing 2 turning chains. After completing row 1, here's what my project is looking like. To start row 2, we're going to chain 2 and turning our work. We're going to then do 77 half double crochets again. If you're unfamiliar with how to crochet the next round, if you see, our stitches from the previous make V's, and what we're going to do is yarn over and insert our hook underneath both sides of that V. So straight through the stitch, this is what it looks like. Pulling through, you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. So showing you again, through the crochet stitch from our previous row, with 3 loops, yarning over all 3, that's a half double crochet for round 2. Again, under this stitch from our previous row, yarning over, pulling through 3 loops, and yarning over all 3 for a half double crochet. We're going to finish the entire row this way, so again, 77 half double crochets. After we've completed row 2, this is what the project looks like. Again, chaining 2 to start our new row, and turning our work. So row 1 is going to consist of 77 half double crochets and chaining 2, and that is going to be a repeat for the entire project. So every row we do 77 half double crochets, and at the very end we chain 2, which is called a turning chains. If you'd like your hat to have a brim, I suggest making it 9 inches tall. If you don't want a brim on your hat, then about 8 inches would be best. Here I am deciding to do a striped beanie. I'm making my stripes almost 2 inches tall, and I'll show you how to do a color change. So basically what I do is after I've done my half double crochet, I just chain 1, and keeping my hook in that loop and taking my scissors, I'm going to cut my working tail of yarn long enough so I can seam up my hat later, which I'll show you how to do for a striped beanie as well. Pulling my hook straight up, my tail comes through and I pull it tight to make a knot. Next, what we're going to do is taking our second color here, we're going to make another slip knot, and I'll show you that again really quickly. Around the 2 fingers, under the first loop, grabbing the second. So what you're going to do is take your crochet hook and go through the very last stitch we just worked, and we're going to place our slip knot onto the crochet hook and tighten it just a bit. Using your hook, you're going to pull your new slip knot through the previous stitch we worked and chain 2. This is going to act as our turning chains to start the next row. So once you've worked that, flip your work, and what we're going to do is place a half double crochet in the same stitch. And just like so, we've started the next row in our new color. Don't worry about the tails, we will use those to seam up our hat at the very end of the project. But now we're just going to work as normal, placing our 77 half double crochets until the very end of the row. I personally decided to work my new color for the same amount of rows as I did the red. So for 5 rows, I worked my new color, and that gave my stripes about a 2-inch thickness throughout the hat. You can change your colors sooner or later, or not at all, it's totally up to you. I just wanted to put this in here to show anyone who desired a striped hat how to do it, or at least how I prefer to work stripes. And after working, my project ends up measuring 9 inches. This will allow for me to have a brim about 1.5 inches wide. If you don't want a brim on your cat beanie, then you can choose to work it shorter. So in order to seam up our cat beanie, you want to make sure and fold your project in half where it's right side facing each. And I'm also going to cut my working yarn, which ended up being my red. I need my working yarn tail to be long enough to seam up the top of my cat beanie, so here I am just snipping it and making sure the tail is long enough. So when it comes to folding our cat beanie in half, you want to make sure that the right side is facing the right side. So here I am showing you, this is the right side where you can see our foundation chain, and here's the wrong side where it's all bumpy, and right side again, and wrong side. So I'm going to show you how to seam up the cat beanie. So here I have my ivory color that I used. And here are the previous stripes that I seamed up that look very seamless. We're going to take our ivory color here and thread it through our tapestry needle. I personally like to start seaming by making a knot. So I'm going to go through one stitch, and as you can see I have this loop, placing my tapestry needle through the loop and pulling the yarn. That will make a knot. And to start seaming I use what I believe is called the invisible method, by going outside in on one side of the project and outside in on the other side of the project. We pull it tight, and that is what is considered the invisible seam. So showing you again, on one side of the project going outside in, and doing the exact same thing on the other side. We pull the working yarn, and that creates the invisible seam. So I'm just going to do that for the entirety of this stripe, and I'll show you how to finish off with a knot at the end as well, and how to thread through your tail. Also, just a reminder to not pull your yarn too tight. You don't want your project to scrunch up and then therefore you lose some height on your project on one side. It'll look very lopsided if you end up pulling your yarn too tight. But coming up on working the last stitch, we're going to do the exact same thing where we work outside in on one side of the project, but I'm going to keep my finger in that loop we just created, working outside in on the other side of the stitch. After that, I'm going to place my tapestry needle through that loop that my finger's in and pull it through to create another knot. This will ensure that your project stays together, whether you wash it or just wearing it over time. It'll keep together, not fall apart on you. That's happened to me many times. And to weave in our working tail, we're just going to go through the stitches of a row that we created. You can really hide this anywhere since it's the same color. If you used a different color that's maybe a mixture of all, like a rainbow yarn or something, just try and like keep it in the same color family so it won't be too noticeable. Again, don't keep your project scrunched up. Make sure you're just pulling the yarn through but not too tight, because you don't want to cut your tail too short so that way when you wear it your tails are just popping out, if that makes sense. And here's how the project looks seamed up. To seam the top of the project, here we have our V's, right? So one is going in one direction and the other is going in another direction. And that's totally fine to seam up your hat. They're not going to go the same way because of how we worked it. I'm just going to fold my hat to where the yarn is at the very edge of the hat. And this time, to seam up a project, we're going to go from the inside out of one stitch. But see, we're only going to work on the outer side with the V stitch. So inside out of the outside V stitch. Same thing on the other side. You have your left and your right stitch. Inside out of the outer portion of the stitch. After that, we just pull our yarn through. Keeping a loop and put our tapestry needle through the loop to pull it through for a knot. So again, to seam up, inside out of the outer portion of the V stitch, inside out of the outer side of the V stitch, and pulling our working yarn through. This is how we're going to seam the entirety of the top of the cat beanie. So after seaming up the final stitch, we're just going to go through one, create a loop with your tapestry needle again, thread the needle through the loop, pulling the working yarn to create a knot to keep our project tied together. We're going to weave in this tail. You don't have to weave in the entire thing, but just a good enough amount to conceal it. Again, just working in the stitches from a previous row. And again, make sure your project is not scrunched up, and cut the tail of your yarn. Here you can flip your work to where it's right side out. Okay, and here is how the final project turned out. I personally love it. I never use red ever. This is the only article of red clothing that I actually own in my entire wardrobe. So, you know what? I think it's actually perfect for Valentine's Day. It's kind of giving like red velvet vibes maybe. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you found it helpful. Again, please make sure to thumbs up this video as it'll help boost the video to other beginner crocheters who are maybe interested in making a cat eared beanie. If you've never made a cat ear beanie before, I hope this tutorial sparked a little interest for you. Please make sure to let me know down in the comments below if you found this tutorial helpful, as well as if you've ever made a cat ear beanie before. I'm very interested to know. And if you do the same as me, that's also another interesting fact, I would think. So with that, I hope to see you guys Friday, as well as I hope you guys have a great week. I believe this video is coming out on a Monday, so I won't see you again until Friday. But with that, I'll leave it here. I hope you guys enjoyed, and happy crafting. Bye!